Hello everyone, it is Hawk. I am back to talk about Degrassi again, because what else would I talk about at this point? I did want to say thank you for all the love on the last Degrassi video. Shout out to my Degrassi Instagram mutuals. But today I thought we would talk about some things on Degrassi that I actually don't like or don't love, rather. I mean, most things on Degrassi I like. It's my favorite show, and definitely reaching special interest territory. As you can see, I got the Downtown Sasquatch shirt on. I tried to do Degrassi makeup. If I look and sound completely exhausted, it's because I am. I'm actually, Jesus Christ, hello. I am transferring schools and actually moving back towards the city in 2 days, so I am kind of freaking out a little bit, but it's fine. Also, Penelope is here. Oh my god, a cat. Isn't she just beautiful? Look at that Toby in action. Okay, anyways, yeah, today I'm going to be talking about things about Degrassi that I don't love. Other storylines I don't think were handled very well, or lessons in the show that I don't think were right. I mean, maybe they just aged poorly, because when I talk about Degrassi, I'm mostly talking about Degrassi The Next Generation. Sorry, I'm also fucking sweating because I'm standing to film this because the lighting is only good in front of my window, but I have POTS, so maybe I shouldn't have, but it's fine. Or characters I think deserve better. So anyways, let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to be talking about that isn't a thing that I love about Degrassi is coming out storylines and the way they handle characters not being out to their parents. This happens multiple times on Degrassi, first with Marco and Dylan's relationship, because Marco eventually is sort of out to his friend group, but he's not out to his parents because he knows his parents won't be supportive. Now, the way they handle this in the show is that his boyfriend Dylan gets really angry at him for not being out to his parents, and he feels like he's a secret and whatever, but he also went into a relationship with Marco knowing that Marco wasn't out to his parents. So for me, it's it's one of those things that you knew what you were getting into, and also Marco is what, 15 maybe at this point? I think he's supposed to be in 10th grade, so 15 or 16. He's still a child, and if he knows that more likely than not him coming out to his parents will not put him in a safe position, I feel like that's completely understandable. Maybe that's just me, but I didn't come out to my mom until quarantine. It was 11th grade, and I knew that she would be supportive. She literally wouldn't care, but it still took me a while. And I just think it's weird that this happens multiple times, where they push this narrative of you not being out to someone is lying about yourself, or a shitty thing to do to people. I don't think that's true, especially when you know it's an unsafe situation, because then later we see Marco comes out to his mom and that goes fine, and she kind of knew. But then he comes out to his dad, and he has to multiple times because his dad will not accept it. We've seen his dad make derogatory comments, multiple times previously in the show. And I just feel it's really weird to push this narrative of dating someone who's in the closet to their parents or to family members or to whoever. That's a moral failing on their part, and not a failing of the parents or family members or whoever to have providing a loving and supportive environment for the kids. because we later see this happen to with Riley and, oh god, what's his name? Zeke, I think is his name. Those are the seasons that I don't really care about, to be honest. So like, I'm pretty sure that's his name, and I just don't care about Riley as a character in general. Sorry. But, and it's the same thing where like, Zeke almost breaks, or does break up with Riley like multiple times because he's not out to his parents. And once again, it's this like, he knows that his parents aren't going to be supportive. He comes from a very like immigrant traditional family, and yet each time both Marco and Riley are treated, they're just broken up with, even though like, once again, their partners knew what they were getting into when they started dating. Like, this wasn't a thing where it was like, oh surprise, like both of them knew that they weren't out to family members. So weird. But yeah, then they're treated as some sort of like bad guy. And listen, there are a lot of things about Riley's character to not like, but this was one of those situations where I was like, he's actually in the right here. Like, you don't have to come out to people. I also, especially, reminder, like, this was filmed in the early 2000s. So also, like, there's that. It was way less acceptable then, even than it is now. And even if you still have, you know, very traditional religious parents now, it's still not easy. Like, you could be thrown out of your house, and for both Marco and Riley to be treated like, yeah, just bad people for not coming out in an unsafe situation, I think is just not good. Like, what is the lesson there? Like, oh, if you don't come out to absolutely everyone, you're lying to people and you're awful and you're not being true to yourself. Like, yeah, okay, maybe you're not being true to yourself, but you're also putting yourself first, especially as a child, as a minor, who, you know, could be put in an unsafe situation, like being kicked out and then having to, I don't know, be homeless or whatever. Like, you know, what are their options? And so I don't love that about Degrassi. Obviously, you know, I think maybe now that would be one of those things that I would hope they would handle better, and maybe not put it as a moral failing on the characters and instead talk about like, because then we kind of see it again with Zoe, because once again, like, she can't come out to her mom because she knows her mom isn't going to accept it, and then she does come out to her mom because of Rasha, and her mom isn't accepting and like basically shuns her, and there's the whole like wedding scenario and whatever. So like, maybe they wouldn't handle it any better, but I would like to think that in 2024 they would be like, oh, maybe we better not. The second thing I don't love on Degrassi is how they handle cheating in relationships. And I'm just gonna use Craig as a really big example here, because there are a handful of things on Degrassi that it's basically handled whereas like the consequences for the character who's doing the wrong action are really, like, the character doesn't show remorse for it. It's really just that they're sorry that they got caught. And I feel like Craig cheating is a very good example of this. Because Craig in this is like season 5, maybe I want to say. I'm pretty sure it's season 5. Is cheating on Ashley with Manny. And it's basically like two-timing them, doing the whole, you know, oh, you're the only one, oh, I'm gonna break up with Ashley, whatever, whatever. And it does end up imploding in Craig's face, but they treat it like really the only issue here is that he got caught doing it. Like, if he could have just continued on to have them both, like, you know, be in secret with the other, then it would have been fine. Like, no, the problem is that Craig is a serial cheater and can't just, like, stay faithful in his relationships. Like, in general, the way they treat cheating in this show is like, I understand that, especially the farther you get in the seasons of Next Generation, the more like teen soap opera it becomes. So I understand that like cheating is a really easy storyline for them to do. However, I feel like they never get like deep enough into it where it's solidified that cheating is a problem and not an okay thing to do. Because I might just be like completely lying on this, but also in next class, isn't there a thing with like Miles where he cheats? Oh, there's a whole thing with where he cheats on Tristan with Lola. Well, Tristan is in a coma. Like, hello? And they're like, oh, but it's fine. I mean, once again, he does like have consequences for it. But once again, it's more so treated as like, oh, you were caught and that's bad. Because I think Miles straight up ends up straight up admitting to Tristan that he cheated while he was in a coma. And like, first of all, that sentence. Okay. Anyways. But like, I don't know. Cheating is bad. You shouldn't do it. If you're with a person, you should want to be with that person. And also, maybe I just didn't date enough in high school, but like, this wasn't, like, I don't know if this is just a widely accepted thing that happens in high school, where like everyone is just cheating on each other, but like, that didn't happen in my school. So like, let me know in the comments if you actually had like, you know, a dating life in high school. Was this a thing? Like, would all the popular kids just cheat on each other? Okay, I know what my third point was now. My third point is, once again, most of these have to do with how degrassi handles like romantic relationships in general, which, as I said, obviously, yes, it does get more like teen soap towards the end, so it's not entirely realistic. But something that happens in the early 2000s a lot happens in this show, and that is the condoning of inappropriate teacher-student relationships with Sav and Miss O. And once again, just the way they treat this is wild. Because the only consequences that are shown are like, oh yeah, she might get fired if you get caught. But the thing is, like, yes, they do mention that Sav is like about to turn 18 at this point, but she's still like 25 or something. Like, it's still not an okay, because if she's their teacher, presumably she's not in college. Presumably she's fresh out of college. So she's at least probably, what, like 22, 23 maybe. As someone who's 20, even I would not consider dating an 18-year-old. Because someone in high school and someone in college, even if you've just been in college for like a year or whatever, have two very different lived experiences and ideas of adulthood and what that means, and just, you're at two completely different points in life. And yes, this is one of those cases where the student pursues the teacher, and they do kind of later resolve this with Tristan and, what is his name, like Mr. Yates or something, that creepy English teacher. But it's shown as more bad because the teacher is pursuing the student in that case. And this is and Sav and Miss O is where a student pursues a teacher, but then the teacher like reciprocates, like they fully kiss, and it's seen as like a romantic moment. And I just don't like that. I think that's weird. That's, regardless of how old you are, if you're a teacher, like, it's not even like she was just a student teacher or something where, you know, it's like a college kid, you know, coming in and like earning their degree or whatever. And like, especially if you're with seniors, I get how it could be more of like a, you have a hard time putting that line between like friend and like, you know, authority figure. But this is not that. Like, she's fully just their teacher. And the fact that they don't even address the problem of there being a power imbalance, they just more address it as like, oh, once again, we could get caught. And that's really the repercussions and consequences of this, is not that it's like inappropriate. It's more so that we could get in trouble if we get caught, because other people are going to see it as inappropriate, but we know it's not. And obviously, like, you know, Mo, who is Sav's friend at that point, is like egging him on and like, you know, tries to like wingman for him, because they're kids, because they don't know that it's not okay for an adult to be, you know, interacting with them like that, regardless of how, you know, close in age they are. Because I know when I was like 17 or 18 or whatever, I was like, oh yeah, I'm an adult, I'm this, I'm that, like, I'm so mature. And now being 20, I'm like, that's a child. Like, what are you saying? You haven't even like been out of your parents' house yet. You know what I mean? So like, I understand the mindset of Sav, and we're supposed to understand the mindset of Sav because his perspective is the one we're seeing it from. However, I still feel like they could have done a better job of making the viewer understand that it's still not okay. Like, that is not a relationship you should be pursuing. It's not something that Miss O should have let happen, because that's her responsibility as a teacher. And yes, she does say multiple times, oh, we really shouldn't be doing this. But once again, it's always like it's not that it is wrong. It's that we can't be doing this here because we might get caught and I could get fired. Not just like no, that's inappropriate, period. It's inappropriate within the context of a school, because these are our roles as a school. But it's just inappropriate, period. And it should not have happened. And this happens on many early 2000s shows, like Pretty Little Liars with Arya and what's his name? Fucking Mr. Fitz or whatever. That dude. Like, it happens multiple times. So it's not just a Degrassi exclusive issue. But I am a little disappointed that in Degrassi they didn't, like, do better, basically. Alright, so the last thing I want to talk about has a little bit more of, like, serious real world implications, and it's kind of just a larger issue with Degrassi, and a little less, like, frivolous than, you know, ooh, cheating or whatever. But listen, so for a show that preaches such like love and acceptance or whatever, I do take issue with the way they treat minority characters, specifically POC characters, as tokens. Now, obviously, I am a white person saying this, so like it's all from my own observation, from what I've heard people say about it, etc., etc., and obviously form your own opinion on it. But I do just take issue with the way that A, there's like no black people on Degrassi, B, and it's especially, we know that Degrassi is in Toronto. Toronto is a city, it's diverse, it's where people would have been immigrating to, and we do see that represented in, you know, characters like Zig, or characters like Marco or Riley, who are, you know, children of immigrants, and later with, you know, Rasha, and that whole, like, storyline of the students coming in, who are seeking asylum. But for some reason, they won't translate that when it comes to actually including POC characters. Because we have like Hazel, for example. Hazel, Marisol, Liberty, Shantae, Danny, eventually. Like, I literally can't think of so many. Jimmy, obviously, but like, they're either sort of like excessively beyond and basically not treated as a POC because, like, so for example, like with Liberty, we don't, I don't know how to word this without sounding like insane, but they're either treated as tokens and stereotypes, or they're not allowed to be both like an interesting character and also represented as POC. Like for Liberty and Jimmy, for example, like they do get a lot of storylines, and Liberty's like there's that episode where they were still doing the weird like college cutbacks where Liberty is trying to get into a sorority, and the like sorority leader girls, I'm not in a sorority, I don't know much about it, so like forgive me if I'm butchering this, basically say that they only need one, meaning that they need one black person. And there's, I think, like two, it's Liberty and some other girl who are both rushing the same sorority, and they go, we only need one, meaning that they need one token of diversity. So like it is addressed eventually, but the way they're treated before that are always like, we either basically get the like rich scholarly like absent parents storyline, which is also what we got with Lucy. I can't think of anyone's names right now. Which, like, obviously is fine, because POC characters should not be expected to carry the weight of every, you know, racism storyline on their backs. That's not what I'm saying. But we also, like, they are not allowed to both acknowledge, you know, their blackness or whatever until it becomes a problem. You know what I mean? Like, until it's an issue with race in the show, they're not allowed to acknowledge it. It's just like, in the same way that, you know, Marco is allowed to embrace his Italian culture or, you know, whatever. It's just very different, very visibly different on how they teach the characters. Or you have people like Hazel and Marisol and Shantae, who are sort of just the eternal sidekick and very one-dimensional. I think we got like one episode with Hazel where it was like culture day or whatever, and she's ashamed of being Muslim, so she like targets other Muslim students and lies about being Jamaican and everything, which is obviously a very lovely, nuanced conversation, and I do think they did that really well. But that's the only episode where we like actually get to know Hazel at all, and it's never again mentioned. It's never, I don't think we ever actually meet her parents or like anything. She then, after that one episode, just goes back to being like the sassy one-liners girl. Same thing with Shantae. Like, I know other people before have talked about how Shantae basically gets like retconned and is kind of just like moved around classes for the sake of like always just being there. Once again, if they need like a sassy one-liner from someone. But she's never really given substance or anything beyond like, I'm trying to think, there's an episode. Once again, I think she gets like one episode that's focused on her, and that's literally it. And and the same thing with Marisol. She's basically just Katie's sidekick the entire time. And we don't really get to know her. We don't really get to know her life beyond being with Katie. And also, Katie is such an awful friend. Like, they're kind of both bitches to each other, which is fine because, trust me, as a female person, we've all been there. But, like, I think that it shouldn't have to be either you're a token and we're only going to use you for race storylines, or we ignore your race and your culture entirely until we can bring it up to make a point about an issue instead of just like celebrating and representing their culture and their heritage just like in a good way. You know what I mean? Like, why couldn't we then have had an episode, and I might just completely be forgetting if there is, but why couldn't we have an episode where then, like, you know, Hazel takes Paige to actually meet her parents or whatever, and, you know, her parents are super excited to meet her and whatever. Like, I just think it's weird that's either like we can have representation of how it negatively affects you instead of, or rather in we can't have any combination of that, but also showing it positively affecting you. I don't know. Like I said, I'm a white person talking about this, so obviously I can only speak on so much because I don't have the lived experience. But I just think it's weird. And I also don't love the way they do this. Obviously not the same thing, but with mentally ill people, especially when we get to the later seasons with like Miles and Esme, is a really good example because Esme is always just shown as crazy. We're given a little bit of depth, and also, you know, disclaimer of maybe they were planning to go further with her character and actually getting some like focus on her and her issues and what actually is like the why behind all of this and the way she is if Next Class hadn't been canceled. But like, it is revealed to us that Esme has gone through severe trauma, and most people suspect that if we had kept going, she would have been shown as someone with borderline personality disorder, which I'm inclined to agree with as someone with, you know, PTSD and a complex dissociative disorder. I agree that that's probably the direction, you know, we were going. But she's never treated with care. She's always just there to act crazy and to, you know, fuck things up, to be a problem, to be dramatic or angry or overreactive, or, you know, give drugs to someone, or like fake suicide or whatever. Like, all of which, like I said before with Craig, mentally ill people do not have to be shown as being good people for them to be redeemable, or good people in the way that most of society wants mentally ill people to be good people, which is basically like, you always have to be on the path to healing, you always have to, you know, still be acceptable in society. And I think it's great that Esme is shown as someone, you know, showing the more extreme and non-acceptable and perceived as negative responses that trauma can give you. And I could make an entire video, I feel like, on why Esme is personally one of my favorite characters out of Degrassi, and why I think she really could have been a lovely turning point for Degrassi if Next Class hadn't been canceled. But I just really wish that she also was given some grace. You know what I mean? Because with characters like Maya, I love so much the way they allowed her past to actually affect her, and we see it over multiple seasons. Because, so like, I'm weird, and I watched Next Class first, not knowing what Degrassi was at that point. It was just like on Netflix, and I watched it when I was like 13 or whatever. But now, having gone back and watched the entire thing and seeing from you know, Cam and sort of the inklings and foreshadowing we had of Maya's depression and her just larger struggles with mental health, I think that's really well done, the way we see it play out over seasons, and how even you know, with Zig, and whenever we see her reference, like with Zig, and when she's worried about like the gang and everything, she's like, everyone, you know, around me dies, like her boyfriend died, and she still carries that guilt of his suicide, even though, or his unaliving, sorry, I don't want to get demonetized, if, regardless of whether it was her fault or not, because it wasn't, but as someone in that scenario, she's still, you know, it's a hard thing to let go of. And I think if someone like Esme was treated with the same care and depth that Maya was, obviously Maya is pretty much the main protagonist of Next Class, but also, like, there are enough episodes of Next Class and there's enough filler of Next Class that I feel like we could have given some time to Esme to, like, have her be a more sympathetic character, I guess. Like, I don't want her, and I feel like she was just used as a plot device for when they need something crazy to happen and, you know, they need her to go psycho or whatever. And I can say that I'm a mentally ill person. Don't come for me. She's just there. And we see a little bit of understanding when, like, for example, she finds Maya trying to maybe unalive herself, and we do see the compassion with which people, I want to say it's Miles or Zig maybe, Next Class is still kind of hazy for me, so forgive me, but the compassion with which it might be Zig treats her, because he knows that she found her mom when her mom committed unaliving. And, like, that's a big thing, right? That's gonna fuck you up for the next, like, for your life forever. I haven't even had things to that extent happen to me, and yet I'm still fucked up for forever. So, like, you know what I mean? And, like, I feel like most people in that show, which, yes, they're teenagers, they're gonna be selfish, but also we've seen people be handled with compassion. Like, not to just keep using Craig as an example, but when we see Craig's reaction to his father dying, to his abuser dying, it's treated with nuance, and he's shown that, you know, he did still love his father, he does still have this grief for him, but, you know, sometimes grief comes out in funny ways, and it's also a really complicated thing when this person did such horrible things to you. And I feel like some of that nuance could have been used for Esme to just not be, like, a villain, basically. Basically, they just used her as a villain. And I think she's much more than that. I think she has the capability to be much more than that. You know, once again, maybe if Next Class wasn't canceled, they would have dived further into that, because I feel like, especially the last season, they really were kind of starting to, like, give us hints. I just wish it had been able to, like, go further. And I also know that neurotypical or non-mentally ill people probably have a hard time truly writing mentally ill people in a real way, because it's not something that you can understand unless you have been through it. However, it's like, if, for example, they really want her to be an example of a person with BPD, then talk to some people with BPD. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't just make her out to be a villain and give her all the negative traits of BPD, but also not show, you know, how she really does care for these people. Because that's it at the end of the day, is that she really does care for Miles, she really does care for Zig, but she's also so distraught about the idea of them leaving her that she will do everything she can, so she is the one who has the perceived power, and so she is the one who leaves them first, so she can't be left. And I think that's a really important, like, distinction to make. She's not a monster, she's not crazy, she's having an appropriate response in her head to the situation she has been put in and the trauma she has endured. Mental illness is not rational. It's not. I know that the reactions I have to things are not rational to anybody outside of me. However, you also have to understand that as a person with trauma, your brain is having what it thinks is an appropriate reaction to these things, whether or not it's over dramatic or, you know, unnecessary or excessive or whatever. At the end of the day, most of it is something you cannot control, and it's just your brain and your body feeling that way and responding to the things you've been given in that way. I mean, Lord knows I've done things that don't make any rational sense, and I can be aware of that and upset by that, while also acknowledging that my feelings are valid and that this is the feeling I'm having towards this thing. Basically, I just want nuance. I want nuance for Esme, and I feel like there wasn't, and I want there to be. Not to get on my mental health soapbox, I kind of did for a moment. My apologies. Maybe one day I'll just make a mental health video so I can talk about it. But yeah, I think I'm done now. I think I'm done ranting. Hopefully this was like interesting and not just me rambling for 20 minutes or however long this video is gonna be. But that's it. After all that, that's it. Let me know down in the comments section what's some of your like Degrassi unpopular opinions or things you think could have been handled better on Degrassi. My next video should be a little vlog of you know, like a little dorm tour, a little like, ooh, look at me actually doing things and having a life again. Because I do like making vlogs. I just feel like my life here hasn't been interesting because it's like I go to work, I come home, I sleep, and I like eat, and that's about it. And then I like watch Degrassi, and that's literally all I do. Because that's all I have the time and energy and like capability to do. But now that I'll be back towards the city, I can like actually do things and have a life. So look out for that. That should be coming up in the next couple of weeks, assuming that I remember to film it. I should be able to film more because I won't be relying on nobody else being home because I'll just be in my dorm room. I have a single, so I can just you know, film whenever. Let me know if you want more mental health content. I might make a whole like about me, I guess. Not that I want to just like spew my trauma on the internet or like, you know, spew my diagnoses or whatever on the internet, because that's also a double-edged sword, because people, especially about the things I have, get weird and will just be hateful, which is why I haven't really talked about some of it on here yet. If you're on my Twitter or my TikTok, if you know, you know what I'm sort of hazily referring to. But as always, you can find me on Instagram at HeliosHawk, on Depop also at HeliosHawk, on TikTok I think is also the same at HeliosHawk, Twitter is at Hawk & Co. Anything else I'm forgetting will be in the description. It's been real. Hope you don't mind my Degrassi rambling. See you in the next one.